Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of November 23, 2020. In terms of the stock market direction, my prediction is that the market will go down on Monday the 23rd and then go up on Tuesday and Wednesday. On Thursday, the stock market in the US will be closed due to a holiday, and then on Friday, the short trading day, that the market will go down again. Overall, as I predicted, we did have a fairly significant, I would say, spike, or rather what appears to be, at least at this time, a top in the stock market on the 16th of November. And so far we didn't see any major drop, but I believe that over the upcoming weeks, the overall market direction will be down from here. And this is because we just had basically over the past weeks, I would say between the 5th and 16th of November, more or less exact conjunction between Jupiter and Pluto, and as of now, in, like I said, upcoming weeks, that conjunction will be separating. So I think that we are about to enter somewhat of a medium duration period of market slowly going down. In terms of the specific focus for each day of the week, Monday, I think that the focus might be on things related to oil, gas, water, such as floods, excessive precipitation, maybe also chemicals, pharmaceuticals, navy, etc. And I had made this prediction already in the past. I'm recording this on Monday afternoon, but I had already posted my predictions on Sunday at my blog at lastunka.com. So I did see that the news on Monday did cover that apparently there was this surprise weekend by some admiral, US admiral, to Taiwan over the weekend. And on Monday, apparently China's, I believe, foreign ministry had made some announcement that they basically didn't like that, and they were going to take some necessary measures to respond to that. Let's see. And there was also news specifically today on Monday about oil prices. Apparently they had risen quite a bit in November, and that again was one of my predictions made already months ago, that November will be a month that will have kind of greater than usual focus on, again, all these things related to oil, gas, as well as pharmaceuticals, chemicals, etc. And so as of now, the oil prices are rising again due to these positive kind of expectations about economy returning to normal because of the positive developments related to vaccines. And indeed, I do believe, and I again made prediction, have been making this prediction for some time now, that November will be a fairly large spike, perhaps the worst, I guess, kind of numbers that we may see then compared to even other times of the year. But after this, starting, I would say, at the end of December even, things will start kind of moving ahead in terms of specifically this pandemic. Although, as I mentioned again in some previous predictions, for a long-term outlook, we will have another potential pandemic. And let me see the years for that. That's I would say it may start as early as 2024. Definitely 2025 would be a significant year, and then maybe as sort of late as through 2026 is when we will have conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. And in the past, that had corresponded with really like spreading of some diseases. It could also, of course, correspond with innovations in, say, medicine, and that was the aspect that was occurring under the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. So getting back to the this week, for November 23 and 24 for the US, we may expect positive news related to earnings, something like increased earnings reported by some companies, positive news about the workforce, and healthcare and or pharmaceuticals. For China, this entire weekend, really through, I would say, December 8, 2020, and especially important dates of November 27 and 28, so the end of this week, Friday, Saturday, Definitely, we may expect some sort of announcement from China related to either currency or banks or their financial systems, loans, debt, taxes even. And this could be related to some sort of a new initiative that is maybe somewhat ambitious, if not aggressive, and it would aim to establish China's kind of dominant position as some sort of financial power, or improve its earnings, or perhaps there may be greater than usual change in the value of yuan, especially yuan to US dollar exchange rate. So that I would expect coming up at the end of this week, and that's for China specifically. But in addition to that, at the end of this week, 27 and 28, I guess 28 is Saturday, but in general, we may expect greater than usual fluctuation in the Forex and currencies, even, in general, could be also Euro USD, and as I said, Yuan USD at the same time. Or there could be also increased announcements at the end of this week about, say, Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency. Let's see. Then on the 24th for China, yet again, we may hear about increased sort of, or rather there may be increased news about either profits, banks, real estate, and financial institutions in general. So there may be some new data coming out or some new reports, sales, contracts, negotiations, but this focus kind of on financial sphere for China is quite strong the entire week. Then on Wednesday for the US, there may be strong focus on the news on things like various legal issues, as well as laws, judges, legal decisions, immigration, long distance travel, transportation, import export, higher education, visas, etc. And there may be some positive news related to those areas, such as things are proceeding smoothly and things are going sort of without any delays. So maybe if there's some legal changes that were pending or some act that was going to be approved, at this time it may go through and be approved without delays. Or perhaps there's a foreign investment that's being allowed to basically happen, or a shipment or some import-export restrictions perhaps are either lifted, or at least there are fewer than usual, I guess, restrictions on movement of goods or people at this time. Or some funding perhaps is granted to, again, initiative that's related to long distance travel or transportation. As I said already a few minutes ago, for Friday, I think the market may go down. At the same time, I think it will be a day of greater than usual volatility for stock market, regardless of the direction. And in particular, the focus may be on currencies, banks, financial institutions, loans, etc., and also on areas related to like airlines, aerospace, electric cars, IT, telecommunications, any sort of this innovative kind of areas like high tech, even power plants. There may be either some greater changes in value for, say, these businesses or their stocks, or perhaps some changes in services that they provide. Then again, maybe the price or the services suddenly cost a lot more than before, and that energy may continue into Saturday as well, even though it's not obviously a trading day. And specifically on the 28th, we may hear about some news that may be a follow-up to the developments that had previously occurred on the 15th and or 16th of November. So perhaps if there was a contract being discussed or had been reached around the 15th and 16th of November around the 27th, 28th, there may be follow-up situation where perhaps there's a change in the value again, or change in some terms of that contract. In terms of global kind of ongoing background influences that we have through the end of this year, we still have this major influence associated mostly with conjunction between Saturn, Pluto, and also Jupiter, where we have this, as I said, this really probably a top in the stock market, and definitely major geopolitical changes sort of in who holds the power, changes in leadership, where old leaders are basically being removed or pass away, as well as, of course, we have this COVID-19 pandemic this year. And previously, for example, in the 80s, during the similar aspect, we had AIDS. So definitely a difficult year. Starting in 2021, the energy will be shifting somewhat. So maybe not as heavy, but there will be definitely a lot of surprises coming up, especially in January and early February. And as I mentioned before, November is one of the more kind of important months of this year, and we may expect greater than usual focus on things like restructuring of various corporations or heads, at the tops of the leadership in the levels of governments. There also may be increased focus on things like oil, gas, navy, chemicals, and things like that. And let's see, for US this month and also through even December, there may be increased focus on banks and financial institutions and their policies, rates, loans, etc., taxes as well. And for China this month especially, but also through December, there may be increased concerns about things related to like pollution, chemicals, as well as pharmaceuticals, floods, and anything that's perhaps buried or has been previously discarded. Maybe it's trash, something that needs to be recycled, but maybe it wasn't properly disposed of, and those things may come up to the surface, and the country may be more likely to deal with issues, again, stemming from contamination, either due to, say, floods or due to those, some chemicals being not being disposed of properly, etc. And for coronavirus, there's some, again, strong indications in the China's chart, specifically astrological chart, that again, November is the final kind of biggest wave, where starting in December, things should be coming to kind of more of a smooth sailing, so to speak, and this may be associated with either vaccines being administered or some other developments, maybe changes in how some process is happening in the labs, or some innovation related to, again, medicine or biology, etc. But again, after the month of November, both globally and for China, things in terms of the pandemic should be kind of improving into the next year. Similarly, oil and related topics should be fairly strong focus in the should have strong focus in the news November and even through, I would say, February of 2021. And in particular, I would pay attention to things escalating, again, in terms of oil, either oil, say, prices themselves, or either some skirmishes or some disputes between countries that are involved in either oil production or transportation, and especially around, I would say, January 9 through 21, which will also coincide with a lot of other surprises and just maybe a little bit more chaos than usual in the world in general. After that, for oil, for next year, I would expect important news or important developments occurring in early April, especially April 8th through 11, and that may coincide potentially with some drop in the stock market, as well as early September, so maybe September 1 through 3rd of September 2021, and again, that may coincide with the drop in the stock market. So speaking kind of this future upcoming directions beyond this week, sometime starting, I would say, December 19th through the end of the year, there may be a slight increase, I guess, in tensions in terms of either increased probability of major earthquake, especially around the 23rd, or if not earthquake, could be something along the lines of protests or terrorist or violent acts, or even some acts of brutality or protests against brutality, things of that nature, or just accidents involving fires, explosions, or, like I said, something that maybe is just an earthquake or some shakeup of that nature, shakeup that's just a natural disaster. And again, especially 19th through the 23rd of December are particularly important times for those kind of developments, but also they're important for businesses related to IT, aerospace, telecommunications, social media, like various networks, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Any high tech, electric cars, electronics, computers, etc. And for those industries, there may be news about various like either new laws or some attempts to regulate those businesses or protect intellectual property or establish some legal precedent for something. And there may also be limitations imposed on things like, say, higher education. Maybe it has to do with international student visas or immigration or international travel. At the same time, this period of, like I said, 19th through 23rd of December approximately may coincide with some businesses or some governments starting new large initiatives, and the initiatives that begin at this time may actually be fairly long-lasting. And definitely I would not underestimate any companies that perhaps have an IPO at that time, or any new initiatives, or anything that's like a new corporation that begins at that time, as in like a company incorporates, or any sort of restructuring that occurs at the time may have long-lasting and potentially beneficial outcome, but over some long period of time. So things may start with struggle, with limitations, but over time there may be greater than usual probability of success, again through sort of this hard work, grinding, etc. Then again, as I said, through December through February of next year, definitely can be an interesting time. The energy will be switching from this kind of a heavy geopolitical, shifts, restructuring, and, like Brexit, like struggle sort of, and who's in power, and what is the old power, is the old leader leaving or not, etc. To kind of things that will be more of a sudden, really fast moving developments and surprises, which may be accompanied also by increased seismic activity, but this will be also accompanied more so this coming year 2021 by things like that are more sudden and unexpected, and maybe there's some turbulent weather where the weather drastically kind of changes day to day. There are strong winds, electric storms, ice storms, again just more focus on not so much earth shaking, but more focus on the maybe again things that have to do with wind, again too much wind, some storms, hurricanes, or again things that just unusual weather for the season, unusual weather for a particular area. Maybe either it's too hot or it's too cold, and suddenly things change overnight. And in terms of the stock market, there may be quite a bit of turmoil, let's say especially January 7th, 2021 through February 7th, 2021, and especially January 9th through 31, and then February 5 or 5th. Definitely some surprises might be coming up, especially for areas that are related to like IT, telecommunications, airlines, aerospace, electric cars, social media, as well as education. So there might be some legal changes or some announcements again that are related to laws as far as like who can do what, travel where, under what conditions. There may be some surprises, maybe even bankruptcies around that time, and basically that may correspond with greater than usual volatility in the stock market. And particularly, I'd say the week of January 11 looks significant and I wouldn't say chaotic maybe, but definitely with a lot of surprises there. And specifically on the January 11 is when we may hear about either some legal contract, import-export decision, or some deal signed that affects international relations or international travel, or involves somehow organization that consists of international group of international, members. Similarly, for the US, especially January 20th, may be a day full of surprises, and that may have to do, and of course that's, I believe, is when the President of the US will be inaugurated. On that day we'll have exact conjunction of Mars and Uranus squaring Jupiter and also Saturn, and so definitely a day of surprises, and again plus minus few days, both for the stock markets, because especially we will have, of course, Uranus and Mars will be in Taurus, which rules money, finance, etc. But also there may be increased probability of either surprising or perhaps unfortunate news related to either service outages for, say, some networks are down, or cloud service providers are down, or electricity, power outage effects, perhaps even the stock markets, when we had some really major storms, in New York area, could be related to airline, either accidents or, again, power outages and or some disruption in travel by air. Or again, a lot of perhaps fires, and again, this could be related to excessive wind and maybe transformer blows up or something like that, or of course ice storm leads to downed trees and power lines needing to be repaired. But this could be on a really large scale, larger than in the average winter in the northern hemisphere, obviously. At the same time, there may also be that week, especially January 11th of 2021, there may be increased news and surprises related to Forex and cryptocurrencies. And generally speaking, the next year and even into 2020, we will have on-off sort of a floating kind of a sometimes more exact, sometimes more loose square between Uranus and Saturn, which may correspond with kind of, again, perhaps, again, especially when the square is exact, either, generally speaking, some conflicts between, I guess, groups or entities or ideas that are more like revolutionary or fight for, or want to be, not fighting necessarily, but stand for things that are like freedom and equality for everyone, and just kind of being really on the cutting edge of some innovation, and forces that are saying, okay, slow down, let's take things really conservatively and be very kind of grow really slowly and carefully, and let's not basically innovate too much because it's dangerous and scary. So those things will be definitely 2021 especially, but even into like November of 2022, those kind of two sort of ideas will be clashing, and in 2021 it may even lead to, again, volatility in the stock market or some protests, and in particular, and let's see, around, as I said already, in January of 2021, especially 9th through the 22nd, but then late June, early July, and then sometime mid-November of 2021, which at that time is not going to be quite as bad. I would say January and late June and early July of 2021 is when those flare-ups may be the worst. Then also for the US, it's interesting to note, I think, for 2021, that April, August, and December may see increased focus on gold prices and the value of US dollar. This may be related to some monetary policy changes in the US. Let's see. And looking even further ahead, just because we have this kind of significant changes happening, especially in the US, it is interesting to know that in 2022 and then 23, US will be undergoing through really significant changes, and those will be related to two major transits to its chart. So one will coincide with Neptune, and then also Jupiter getting into its fourth house that has to do with real estate, and also land, farming, banks and their assets. And also we will have Pluto return, the first Pluto return since US was founded. And so those would coincide with, again, on one hand, maybe some sort of major tax reforms, changes in real estate, where perhaps there'll be some sort of legal act that somehow affects opportunity to buy real estate. But also there may be either, on the one hand, increase in prices perhaps initially, but then because maybe there is some sort of a financial benefit or some sort of a tax break or something, and so many people may rush to buy, and the real estate prices may go up. At the same time, it may be to the point where things kind of go out of hand, and it may end up with basically foreclosures and too much inventory, but definitely some major acts related to mortgages, real estate, and banks' assets around like especially 2022. As well as there may be increased, flooding and some damage, and therefore obviously insurance may go up on some of those areas, and or it may be also associated with some pollution of the farmlands. As far as the Pluto return, generally speaking, we may expect things like scandals or really major reforms and changes related to, again, power, as on who's the leader, what is the power structure, what is government, what does it consist of, how does it function, and because Pluto is in the US, second house of finance and banks, it may also be related to sort of financial power and restructuring related to financial institutions, financial systems, and sort of financial reforms and changes related to its currency. Let's see. And I guess the last little note that I had here is that looking really far ahead in 2025, around April and May of the year, and then January, February in 2026, there may be greater than usual moves in silver and gold prices, and that again could be related to notable moves in or changes in US monetary policy and or value of its currency. And so hopefully this, for those who are more familiar with those particular areas, this provides any sort of interesting insights in terms of what might be happening in the world and in the US specifically in the upcoming week, a few months, and even in upcoming years. And until I guess next week, I hope that you had enjoyed this particular week of predictions and have a happy Thanksgiving, and I'll catch you guys next week.